we've talked a lot about the fact that there's a lot of wholesale changes, but it felt like maybe, and you tell me, you were living it, eating it, breathing it, but just reading it, it felt like maybe there was a bit of a clapback from the Lions, from players about sort of how down we are on the number of changes that are happening within the organization.
I definitely think there's a sense of like, do you think that because our coordinators left, the players aren't here anymore, the talent isn't here anymore, the ideas aren't here anymore? And even on the coaching side, there was this sense of, okay, yes, Ben Johnson's gone, and no one is denying he was a great play caller and a great pass game coordinator. But Hank Fraley, who I talk about every 4 minutes on this show, their offensive line coach and run game coordinator, is still there. So when you think about some of the concepts they had, their run game actually isn't really changing. It's mostly just their pass game concepts. Then you go defense, and it's like, okay, well, their defensive coordinator, Calvin Shepard, he was on the staff under Aaron Glenn. And so I think when you look at that, you say, this staff should be able to continue some of the same ideas. And I think it's less about, will the scheme be the same? And it's more about, will the play calling rhythm develop early in the season or later in the season? And then you have guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown telling me like, oh, and by the way, we think Jared Goff is underrated. You guys all don't understand how great he is. And just because he doesn't have spectacular plays like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, you think that he's not great, but he is. So there's a definite like chip on their shoulder vibe after the early playoff loss to Washington. And also this idea of like, we're more comfortable as underdogs in Detroit. And so this is actually a better place for us to be in than we were a year ago.
It's an interesting concept to turn yourself back into an underdog, right? Like to be philosophical here for a second, because the Lions spent a long time living with everyone doubting the organization, right? But now you think about it and there's these heaping expectations. And, you know, I think I almost forgot till I watched quarterback. We talked a little bit about it on the episode with C-Rob, but watching quarterback, it's just a reminder of how dominant that season was and how bad the final moment of that season was. Like to get your butt kicked that way by the Commanders. A lot of mitigating factors, a lot of reasons, but it is interesting when you couch it that way because I feel like the pressure is mounting for Detroit to make something of this moment that they're in. And it's interesting that even in that mounting pressure, they can still find a way to look around and say, nobody believes in us. But I'm not sure that's really the case.
Right. I think there's a difference in that. Like, I'm in Philadelphia right now, and we'll get to the Eagles later in this conversation. But one thing I'll note is they're very much like the 2024 Eagles are gone. We're not focused on the Super Bowl. We're not focused on what we were and how we want to build off it. We're focusing on clean slate, 0-0, do the best we can every day. The Lions are very different in that they are saying, actually, we do want to take what happened to us in the playoffs and build off it. Now, obviously, one had success and went all the way, and the other did not. But Dan Campbell told his team as the Lions started training camp, like, we are out to finish what we started and we're going to close out some of these debts. He said they were going to have a reckoning. So they definitely are trying to use the motivation from last year and not say, we're a new team, new coordinators, new year. It's no, we're the team that last year didn't follow up from our 15-2 season and the NFC Championship appearance beforehand in the prior year, and we are going to be the team that gets it done this year.
And it is at least a fair point when you think about the talent on that roster. Like there is something to, as much as I find myself infatuated sometimes with Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, and I think the point that I've made repeatedly here is you're not just replacing a coordinator, you're trying to replace the best offensive coordinator in the league in the minds of some. So like it's got to be a home run, but there is an element of, hey, part of that lies with they've got just player after player after player on that offense that's incredible. New center, though, and you're bringing in a rookie to try and come in and accomplish a lot on an offensive line that was one of, if not the best in the NFL. You've talked a lot about your love of their offensive line coaching process, but I do think, isn't it fair for all of us to step back and say, hey, a change at center is significant for this team?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Frank Ragnow was one of the better setters in this league during the time that he played. And I had talked to him in training camp a year ago, and it was really clear that he knew everything that was going on. He was taking certain protections off of Jared Goff's plate. He was really making sure he and the line were on the same page and that the line was on the same page as the rest of the roster. And when you have a younger guy come in and do that, it's not necessarily the same vibe. Now, when I talked to left tackle Taylor Decker at camp this year about how you bring a new guy along, you say, look, we actually want him to make the calls and not be corrected every time during training camp, because even if he doesn't correctly identify the Mike linebacker or make the Mike point, etc., he needs to develop that confidence, because if he doesn't develop the confidence, he's not ever going to feel comfortable making it in the speed of the game. And so I think that there is this sense of what's the give and take of like, you need the five on the same page, but if they're all on the same other page relative to what the assignment had called for, that might be better sometimes than always undermining your center. But it is interesting. Frank Ragnow came in and was like, well, Matthew Stafford had been doing this forever. And then you have Jared Goff get here, and it's like, well, now Frank Ragnow learned from Matthew Stafford, and so Jared Goff can kind of let it be on him. And there's this just a cycle, and I see it on different teams. I mean, when I covered the Cowboys, Dak Prescott came into the league in 2016, and Travis Frederick was a perennial Pro Bowl center. But then by the time Travis retired and Tyler Biadasz came in, the next Wisconsin center, it was like, okay, well, Tyler was learning from Dak. So it's a normal life cycle event in teams, but I do think that given how reliant the Detroit Lions are on their scheme and on their offensive line to propel that scheme, it is going to take a little bit of time at the beginning of the season.
In honor of Frank Schwab, we should say on Wisconsin. I think we're obligated to do that whenever we say something complimentary about
I
a
have
Badger.
talked to a lot of Wisconsin guys the last couple of days between Biadasz and Washington, and then Zach Bond in Philadelphia. So yes, I've had my fill of Badgers.
This is,
I mentioned Scott Tolzien being a coach in New Orleans, and then Zach Bond's like, oh yeah, Wisconsin guy. I'm like, yes, but of course.
Frank Schwab's favorite episode that we've ever done in the history of the show. Okay.